Hello and welcome to the Monday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who's going to be making some retroactive decisions. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
I'm going back. Hello. I'm going to go back in time and stop myself from talking myself into believing in David Moyes. That's my plan.
So didn't you read somewhere recently that David Moyes, his 6-year contract with United would still be ongoing if he'd He
would have 2 years left, and in the 4 years in between, he's been fired from 3 clubs.
Oh, dear.
So not great. Or at least he has left 3 clubs.
Yeah, so he recently left Sunderland after the final day of the season. Mm-hmm. Relegation confirmed a couple of weeks back at least.
Yes.
Maybe more.
Maybe more.
All right, so on today's show, we're going to have a quick look at the Premier League finale.
Yep.
We're going to look at the U20s. The US Under-20s started their World Cup, their U20 World Cup campaign. It was equal parts good and bad, but there are definitely some goals to talk about.
Yes, sir.
No spoiler alerts for the score if you haven't seen it yet. And then we've got lots and lots of scouting report updates at the end of the show. Lots of exciting things happening with youngsters around the world.
This is true, but first, maybe we should explain why you introduced me as looking at things retroactively.
Yeah, so retroactively, I should have just stuck with that. So the big news, on Friday, it was after we'd recorded our shows, is that the FA, starting next season in the Premier League, are going to be looking at footage from games, and if you've dived and it earned a penalty or a card for an opponent, you could be retrospectively punished.
There we go.
So divers beware.
So it's only people who dove to earn a penalty or to get another player sent off.
Yes.
Those are the ones that we punish. So it's not just anytime there's a collision that maybe the player could have stayed on his feet or her feet, obviously. I think then those won't be as important as the penalties or the red card incidents.
But I was confused about this to begin with. Oh, why only do that? But then I realised all the high-profile incidents, they're all penalty incidents, give or take, right?
They're all penalty, or it is people staying on the ground and acting as though they've been maliciously attacked, when in reality, no contact was made. And there've been, I think there was a Man United player this season who faked a headbutt and went down. And so, those moments where maybe it wasn't quite so bad. Yeah, those are probably deserving of a red card as well.
So the official phrasing is when there is clear and overwhelming evidence to suggest a match official has been deceived by an act of simulation.
Right.
And as a result, the offending player's team has been awarded a penalty and or opposing player has been dismissed.
And see, actually, that phrasing is what's confusing to me about this issue, because it makes me wonder if this is like a reasonable doubt scenario, because what it's going to be is it's a panel of, 3 people.
You think this will go into a US court of law?
Well, no, in the sense that, so it's going to be an ex-manager, an ex-player, and an ex-official. That's the board. Yeah. That's the 3-person board that will review and decide. All 3 people have to agree for the decision to be overturned or for the ban to be instituted, right?
Yep.
But I am curious about if it has to be absolutely 100% he dove, or because you and I have watched those incidents before where we really can't see for sure if the player could have avoided the challenge or maybe left a leg behind or maybe jangled that leg out just to make contact and then contact happened and then they went down. So you could argue that it's a dive, but there was contact. And in those situations, I am curious what they'll end up deciding.
Yes, there's a difference, right? If you're not touched at all and you go down and say it's a penalty, they can go back and sort of ban you for that act of simulation. But there is definitely a thing. There's a striker's skill where you leave that foot behind and make sure that you get hooked. And I think, I'm running this through my head now, I think in that case you've deceived the defender as much as the referee.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You've made the contact happen. So my guess would be that they won't give you any sort of suspension for that because you made contact happen. And there's a bit of cheating about it, but it's not fully simulating and deceiving the referee into thinking that something happened that didn't.
And that's where I go back to. I feel like it will have to be beyond a reasonable doubt. It will have to be Daryl running into the box, trips over his own feet, and then falls down and acts as though he's been murdered when there was no contact at all.
I've only ever done that once.
I can't even remember it. I can't remember you diving.
No, it wasn't with you.
Oh, there you go. Versus an incident where maybe there's a little bit of contact. I feel like then it's I could see why he might have gone down, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. The other issue I have there is what happens if the ex-player and the ex-manager are all hard men, quote unquote, and so it's just somebody breaks their leg and it's he could have played through that.
It's like Graham Souness and Roy Keane.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I'm curious what happens then.
And the other guy's Glenn Hoddle.
Yeah. Or a Scottish official from the 70s. We'll see what happens then. Everyone is suspended forever, always.
I think, as with everything, it's going to be, as with everything in the Premier League, it's going to be dramatic and controversial for the first season, and then we'll slowly get used to it.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. Because already Sam Allardyce is complaining already.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's utter rubbish, right?
Yep, utter rubbish.
Or it will be like the rule from this season where you're not allowed to surround the official or like put a hand on him or talk to him.
Yeah,
that
lasted the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to give it 3 weeks, but I think you're right. It was 2 weeks. And then they're like, yeah, never mind.
Well, should we talk about the season that just was?
Sure.
That was the season that was.
All right.
So we went into the final day of the season.
We did.
They have all the games kick off at the same time on Sunday. So it was 10 a.m. over here, US East Coast time.
So much drama.
Embassy Sports had it all set up for Championship Sunday. And it's supposed to be like a title race and a top 4 race, maybe a Europa League race, and definitely a relegation battle. All we got on the final day of the season was who will finish fourth, Liverpool or Arsenal.
Yes. And I will say the only thing that makes me happy about this is that this was my 2016 prediction for the Premier League. Is that it would end with Chelsea on top, winning. You'd pretty much know who the relegation teams were, like well in advance, and the only drama, quote unquote, would be about who finishes fourth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as soon as Liverpool took the lead against Middlesbrough, the drama was over, right? Because there was no. I mean, all due respect to Middlesbrough, but they have been one of the worst teams in the Premier League.
I think you still said it harsher than the commentator did, but I think it was when Liverpool were up 2-0, and the main commentator said something like, "Well, you never know what's going to happen," and then the color commentator said, all due respect to Middlesbrough, but it's Middlesbrough, like basically.
And as you said, Liverpool were 2-0 up, and Middlesbrough had everybody behind the ball. Rudy Gestede was back, probably in his own defensive third.
They were in a 6-3-1, and every one of those players was behind the ball. It was ridiculous.
I'm laughing as if you're exaggerating, but you're not.
Yeah, because I think the commentator was really doing that thing where you're trying to like kind of add a little bit of drama to it. And well, you never know, it could be this, and they have been known to counterattack as they're all very happily bunkered behind the ball while still being 2-0 down.
Can we give a bit of praise to Liverpool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Watching this Liverpool break down an inferior team, which is a thing that they'd struggled with sort of in the middle of the season, they did a much more sort of clinical, professional job of going through that 6-3-1, is that what you call it?
Yeah.
With goals from Wijnaldum, near post, top corner. Coutinho, free kick, bottom corner, bad luck, Brad Guzan, and then Adam Lallana right at the end. And the free kick was a beautifully taken free kick. The goal by Wijnaldum and the goal by Lallana both included all kinds of clever, fast, off-the-ball movement. And I really saw in those two goals, this Liverpool team is a Jurgen Klopp team, and I only see it getting better.
Yeah. I will add the little tiny thing there. The reason why I was a little bit hesitant...
Tiny asterisk? Tiny asterisk?
It's not even an asterisk. It's just that I would say Brad Guzan probably could have done better with the first goal. It was at the near post, but it's tough when you're in a 1v1 situation. The free kick, as well as it was and as tricky as it was still to the side that he was theoretically set to defend.
Yeah, and the wall has one side, he has the other, and then he went and defended behind the wall.
I think he just assumed that Coutinho would try to put it up and over the wall, so then he cheated a little bit.
Well, you know what happens when you assume.
Yep.
You can see goals to Brazilians.
Exactly. And you end your Premier League career on somewhat of a down note.
Yep.
But if you're Liverpool, you're pretty happy that was the result. Yeah, that's good. So I mean, that little note aside, I thought it was really, really impressive from Liverpool because, as you said, it's a Middlesbrough team that are compact. They are happy to get a 0-0 result. They're happy, it seems like, to have a 1-0 loss. Like, they were not too intent on making anything really happen. And so I think Liverpool had their work cut out for them in terms of creating opportunities.
And that's been the problem, right? So many times they've come up against teams that just bunker back and they just couldn't quite crack them open. But when you saw, like, the way Wijnaldum moved and, like, received that layoff pass from Firmino for the first goal, the way Lallana's buzzing all over the place, they have so many players that seem to be all over the place at once that I feel like Liverpool are onto something. And again, this was my pick to win the Premier League when we did our January predictions for the rest of the season.
Right. I mean, that said, I think even with you thinking there was a chance they would win the title, I think finishing fourth is still, and we're going to get into kind of like a good or bad season review really quickly in a little bit, but I think it's still a very strong season for Liverpool because I think it is.
Well, they didn't make the Champions League last year, right?
And it's true, very true. Which is something I forget. I always kind of assume that they did because I think that one season that they made it under Brendan Rodgers.
Because everybody was so excited about Jurgen Klopp after he took over. It just felt like a successful season, even though it wasn't by recent standards.
No, it wasn't. But I think you could see, again, he's got the foundation there now. He's been there for, a year and a half. This is his first full season. He's gotten rid of some players. I think he's going to get rid of some more in the offseason. I think he's going to strengthen that team. And I really think he is going to prioritize, at least to some extent, being very competitive and making it out of the group in the Champions League.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well, so one more point on Wijnaldum. He seemed like one of those guys that didn't make sense as a signing, but then when you watch this game, he makes perfect sense because you see him doing all the things that a Jurgen Klopp team does, the things that Klopp wants him to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I mean this in like an absolutely positive way, but I feel like Liverpool are a team that they don't need stars in the sense of they don't need to bring in Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. They don't need to bring in...
Or Zlatan, for example. It would ruin things.
That's the thing. Is like I feel like the stars that they will have and do have are the ones that kind of have come about organically from adapting to the system and then flourishing within it.
Like Firmino is another one where it's not a gigantic name, right? He was playing in the Bundesliga, not a gigantic name, but makes sense at Liverpool.
Yeah, Coutinho I think as well. Like, and you can look at these guys who are incredibly talented, incredibly skillful, but I think a huge element of it is their ability to buy into a very difficult and challenging system. Yep. And if you succeed there, then it's very obvious that you're succeeding there. Another one would be Adam Lallana, who I don't think is a world-class player on that standard. I would say sometimes looks very good for England, sometimes doesn't look very good for England.
Wasn't he the example someone used recently for the flatter to deceive phrase?
Yes.
In our terminology.
It gets used a lot. But I think for Liverpool, he does exactly what Klopp wants. He listens. He is willing to adapt. James Milner, the same. I think more than happy to do different things based on what's asked of him.
He's just secretly become the left-back, right? Yep. It just seemed like he was filling in for a little while, and then suddenly he's just played there regularly and made it his own, and Moreno can get nowhere near it.
Yeah, and so, exactly.
He could start next season at left-back.
Alberto Moreno was even there.
Yeah, I think Alberto Moreno did as well.
Yeah, Moreno, again, not the Moreno that I drafted in the CONCACAF draft, by the way. But, and so with that in mind, I won't be surprised when Liverpool go out and, because they will need to strengthen, they will need to add some more players for depth for that Champions League campaign, and then just generally speaking, you're going to strengthen. I won't be surprised when they sign 3 or 4 names that we're like, huh? Okay, all right. I mean, I guess we'll see. And I don't think they'll be in the Andy Carroll, Christian Benteke mold. I think it will be more so players that were...
Giant £30+ million centre forward.
Not so much, but more so in the Sadio Mane, Wijnaldum kind of mold, where it's like very exciting, clever players that haven't necessarily been at like the top level yet, or have been playing in a really competitive league, but not for Bayern Munich or Real Madrid.
I think you just nailed it. Hardworking and clever. Yep. Those are the 2 things that I think Klopp seems to go after.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
They're going to sign Zlatan now.
Just to ruin this whole... We'll come back and delete this segment.
Yeah, okay.
It'll be fine.
Retroactively.
So we said thumbs up to Liverpool because they finished 4th. They kind of ruined Championship Sunday by scoring at the end of the first half and again at the start of the second half. You could almost see Rebecca Lowe's face be like,
now we've got nothing.
But Arsenal did their job elsewhere. They beat Everton with the calmest assist I've ever seen from Danny Welbeck.
Yeah. It was an up and down game for him because he should have finished the sitter and then missed it, but then it was finished for the first goal. And then for the second, I guess he thought he was offside, but still continued.
Is that why he was slowly turned around and passed it?
I think that's what the commentator said. Is he just like Welbeck? I think thought he was offside, and that's he just trying to square it to Sanchez, right?
I think so. Yeah. I thought it was just magnificent composure from Welbeck. I didn't know he thought the whistle had gone.
Hey, it could be. You never know.
But anyway, Arsenal did their job on the day, but obviously they hadn't done their job through the season, and so they finished 5th. Yep. We have to say failure, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's a failure regardless of what happens in the FA Cup. Because they could win the FA Cup, but they're still going to be in the Europa League. It's still going to be 5th.
Yeah.
Yes, it puts them in a position to, Leicester, Chelsea, the last 2 title winners, not playing in Europe, or at least not playing in the Champions League. Actually, not playing in Europe at all. So maybe that's the difference. But you have to imagine that
Arsenal need to finish further down the table. They need to finish like 10th or 11th. Right?
Yeah, I think that was the rule. Yeah, that's the rule.
They want to challenge for the title next year.
But I have to imagine that Arsenal are not going to be prioritizing competing in the Europa League as much.
I would have said that about Man United at the start of this season.
I'm not sure they did until they made the quarterfinals. Yeah. I think that was where they were like, all right, fine.
So they made the quarterfinals Europa League and they're like, we're 6th in the Premier League and it's kind of a tough ask. So let's just say that this is what we're focusing on.
It's still an interesting decision, I would say. Because
it's really brave because it could all have gone wrong.
Well, and it's still very well may.
If Pione Sisto could shoot.
But you say it's not looking that likely. At the time, I think they were only like 3 points back and Liverpool had like 2 games in hand. Like they easily, if they had just focused completely on the Premier League, they easily could have been top 4.
Yeah.
Easily if the results had gone their way, I mean to say. But it's not as though it was like they looked at it and they were 10 points back, everything was level, and they thought, okay, we're going this way. I do think a big part of it was just the injuries Mourinho had, but I do think his reluctance to embrace the Europa League comes about from all of the many, many comments he's made about how bad the Europa League is.
Yeah, he knows there's a kind of, I don't want to get too political, there's a very like Donald Trump hypocrisy thing to that, where it's like obvious hypocrisy, but he just doesn't care. Yeah, Mourinho embracing the Europa League.
Yeah, I think he doesn't care.
Like, he doesn't even acknowledge what he said in the past. He's just saying what he says now. Yeah, and it's fine.
Exactly.
That game, by the way, is Wednesday afternoon. It's Manchester United versus Ajax. We're hoping to have a preview for you tomorrow.
Indeed, but I want to ask you some more Premier League questions then.
So, of course. Yeah,
so you would say Arsenal, even if they win the FA Cup but finish 5th, would you consider it a failure of a season?
I love seeing a team lift silverware.
Yep.
But still, yes, because they finished outside the top 4, and you just expect Arsenal, for the last 20-something years, have made the Champions League. So, yes, you got to consider that a failure. I don't think I'll get any hate mail from Arsenal fans for saying that.
I don't think so. And I think with all the confusion and changes and flux in that squad, I think it was understandable why they finished outside the top 4, but it's still, I think, a disappointment for Arsenal fans.
I will say long-term meaning the next couple of years, even if this season isn't what causes Arsene Wenger to be like, all right, I give up, I quit, let someone else have a go. If it just shakes things up a little bit and makes him come back next season and like make a big splash and like really go for it in some way, it may turn out to be more useful to have finished 5th than to finish 4th or 3rd and assume that everything's good, and then Wenger just keeps rolling as is.
That's fair.
Maybe a catalyst or a little kick in the butt for Wenger to do something different.
Hooray for hypotheticals.
Failure, but possibly useful in the long run.
Okay, what about Man City then? Finishing 3rd.
Weirdly now it feels fine.
You think?
I think because it's been so long since we start the season, we thought, okay, Man City, Guardiola's first season, title challenge seems to be happening, right? Because they were great the first few weeks. Then that fell off, and we all thought, oh, this is not looking so good. And then they were like 5th for a little while, and you think, oh, this is looking very, very bad. Yeah. In the end, because there was no title challenge excitement for a long time, that feels like less of a failure because it doesn't seem like a recent option.
I don't know. Drunk Pep said it might have been a failure, so who knows?
Did he really?
I think it was in the press conference that after he they played West
Barcelona
Brom,
Bayern would have fired me.
Yeah, and I think it was after he'd had a couple glasses of wine with Tony Pulis that he said that.
Did you say red wine is red wine and Tony Pulis is Tony Pulis?
Yes. Yeah.
I just would have assumed Tony Pulis drinks cans of Carling Lager.
Yeah, I would like to disagree with you, but I will not. But I would say I think City and Man United, even though they finished very far apart in the table, I would say 3rd and 6th is very far apart when it comes to the money they both spent. I think they both have a similar season in terms of it could be considered a success, but I think it's being spun as a success more so than it actually was one, if that makes sense. Because I think for United, it's, we've had so many injuries, but if we win the Europa League, then we qualify for the Champions League, and then it's a success. And for City, it was like, oh, well, we're figuring things out, and this player doesn't fit the system, and so we're going to have to change things around, and now we have 9 players or however many leaving in the summer. So I think both of them are sort of looking at the situation and saying, here's how we can make it sound like this is actually what we wanted to happen.
Let's just call it Pep's practice season.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
That's another one where in the long run, it might look okay, right? If Guardiola does like make additions that he wants and the team looks more like his team next year, you might look back and say, oh, 3rd place wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I think, okay, that could be. And it does like give you the foundation building block for what's to come. Yeah. So I would still say, though, I'd say Chelsea, obviously success. I'd say Tottenham, obviously success.
Yes.
I'd say City, closer to
It's the most questionable one, right?
Yeah. And then Liverpool, success. Arsenal, failure. Man United, it's tougher. I guess we'll have to see what happens.
I would have expected them to go back at the top 4. Right? But again, Europa League win, Champions League, etc. Then you've qualified for the Champions League. You've kind of 4th place is a trophy in that way.
But no parade, they've said.
Is that right?
Yeah,
that's a weird decision.
I think Jose Mourinho again trying to like keep things sort of like, no, this is what we're supposed to do. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it all.
All right, so that was a very quick Premier League summary. I would call that.
Yep.
Today's show is sponsored by Ruffneck Scarves. And we asked a question on Twitter.
We did.
If you were going to design a scarf, as you can do at Ruffneck Scarves, you can design a custom scarf, put whatever you want on it. But if you're going to design a scarf to celebrate Jurgen Klopp, this is in honour of Liverpool finishing 4th, what would be on that scarf?
Yep. All right, a couple different good responses here. The first coming from C-Dub Esquire. Congratulations on that law degree. I don't know the science or how this would work, but whatever the design, the scarf would apply constant, uncomfortable pressure to your neck.
That's a good answer. But probably not a scarf I would be comfortable wearing.
I think it's like wool and then you put it in the dryer. That's pretty much all it takes, right? Then it shrinks down. It's not going to be too comfortable. That's what I'm going with.
Maybe it's good in the winter if you really want really want to stay warm. Mason says, the silhouette of him, Klopp, violently hugging someone. That is a thing that he does.
It is. It could be tough in the silhouette. Who knows? Dave Hopkins says, boom and giving it bifters.
So these are two different things, right?
Yeah, can you explain either one or both?
Boom is, I think he was asked to explain, was it Liverpool's win over Man City at some point?
Yeah.
And they asked him and he said, the best word I can think of is...
boom.
And he looks directly in the camera and says, boom.
And then he laughs uproariously.
Yeah, and I feel like he knew, it was almost like he's like, how can I create a meme?
Yeah.
I'm going to do this right now. Right? Maybe he thought Vine would last longer.
Would you be surprised if you learned that he has some like social media director who's in charge of like meme creation for Jurgen Klopp?
Possibly.
Like, here's what you have to do.
He's meme advisor.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The memes are. And then the other side, giving it bifters. This rang a few bells and I Googled it. It's when he had the learn to speak Scouse lessons with the 9-year-old young lad from Liverpool.
There you go again.
I think we talked about this off air. Do you remember what giving it bifters mean?
No.
It means
giving it your all.
Giving it your all.
Okay.
Yeah. It means that you're going at it like full throttle, giving it bifters. So, for example, when Adam Lallana is pressing, he's giving it bifters.
Do you know what bifters comes from or
no
what it
idea.
means? All right. Bifters means all. That's what I'm going to go with. Jay Straub says boom on one side. That makes sense. And normal one on the other.
Is it some Mourinho thing?
I think it's him responding to that, where it was like, he's the crazy one, he's the special one, I'm the normal one.
I see.
I think that was his introductory press conference.
Yeah,
although that wouldn't make sense because Mourinho wasn't here for his introductory press conference.
I would bet, and I'm sure Liverpool fans will correct me if I'm wrong here, that when he came, people said, like, when Mourinho first came, 'cause it was early on, right, he said he was a special one. Would you say you're the same? And I think he said, I'm the normal one.
There you go.
Which turns out kind of not to be true, but okay.
Yeah.
Patrick Malloy says it'd be really tiny due to all the high pressure it was in.
There we go. That's what I was saying.
It's a tiny scarf because of high pressure.
David Adam, on one side would be him hoisting the Arsene Wenger Memorial Cup. That's the 4th place trophy. On the other side, his ZipRecruiter ad for a left back. That's
Albert Moreno's
brutal
not apply.
on both accounts. Yeah.
I think ZipRecruiter is not a sponsor of TSS, but I've heard them on other podcasts, and I heard you can like filter things out.
Yep.
So I imagine one of the filters would be Albert Moreno. If that name comes up, filter it out.
Yeah.
Don't send it to me.
One of the qualifications would be, how can you handle me screaming at you when you overcommit in a challenge?
Justin Miller says, his face in the centre, then one of his arms on each side so that you can wrap it around yourself and enjoy the magic of a Klopp bear hug.
I feel like a lot of these are coming from Liverpool fans.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, right?
Nestor Benwich says, glasses and teeth.
So glasses on one side, teeth
Accurate.
on the other?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That might be my favourite one so far, just because I can graphically picture that.
I feel like
you know what I mean?
You're saying it's your favourite one so far because we both know what's coming next.
Oh, yeah, Andrew J. Abernathy just sent us a picture of Jurgen Klopp playing a guitar in a heavy metal style.
Yes. Which is to say he's screaming. Yeah. And wearing black. That's all it takes. And finally, Alex Rendon says only his screaming face. The image of him playing guitar works pretty well.
So if you would like to design any of those scarves, you could do so at ruffneckscarves.com. That you can do any custom design you want, and you can get 20% off any scarf, anything you find at ruffneckscarves.com with the coupon code TOTALSOCCERSHOW, all uppercase, all one word.
Thank you to Ruffneck Scarves for sponsoring today's show. They are the official scarf providers of MLS, USL, the NCAA, and US Soccer. And the Total Soccer Show and custom scarves. What more could you want?
I can't think of anything.
There you go. So you've heard of US Soccer, have you?
I have.
When have you possibly heard of them?
4 a.m. this morning. Okay, we didn't stay up and watch the U20s.
Oh, no, we did not.
We did DVR it, though.
Yep.
Congratulations to anyone who stayed up.
It was a lot of people based on the Twitter responses.
Congratulations to anyone who stayed up to like 4:08 a.m.
Yep.
Or I guess 1:08 a.m. Pacific after Ecuador had scored 2 goals and said, I'm not giving up and going to bed now. I'm going to stick through and see if this ends with a 94th minute equaliser.
Yep. And I have to say, there's so many games in my life that I have looked at the scoreboard and seen how much time was remaining and thought, this could be that game. there's a chance it could be that game. And I feel like it never is when I watch live. So all I'm going to say is you're welcome, U.S. Soccer, because I didn't watch this live. That's why they were able to have the 3-3 comeback. And spoiler alert for the game result now.
So, 3-3. The final result, the U.S. Under-20s against Ecuador, their first game of the U20 World Cup, USA 3, Ecuador 3.
Yep.
Very quick capsule is Ecuador scored twice in the first 10 minutes.
Not ideal. For 7 minutes, yep.
Yeah, the US scored a couple more, equalised. Ecuador went back up. The US equalised again late. Much drama. Some great soccer being played. Some horrible defending from the US national team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the first 2 goals are the ones that we should focus on. But it's not like it got much better. It was pretty loose for most of the game.
Well, let's say the third goal was the worst. The third goal was the worst because it's a goalkeeper error. But the first 2 goals are sort of like team-wide failures of defending.
Yes, and I think
which weirdly makes it even worse.
Yeah, I think so. And it points to, I think Brian Sciaretta did a good job in his post-match write-up of pointing out that Marlon Fossey, the usual U20 right-back, had to pull out of this one with a hamstring injury, I think it was.
This is the Fulham. He's in the Fulham Academy, right?
Yes.
Team.
So you had Herrera?
Aaron Herrera.
Thank you. Not under, but Aaron. Starting at right back. And I think Ecuador did their homework, saw this guy, and thought, maybe we can go at him and see what happens. And you saw that in the first couple minutes when they really did just go right down that channel and they didn't have much resistance. And then 5th minute, 7th minute, 2 goals.
Yep.
Really focusing on that side of the field.
And interesting, so Aaron Herrera's the right back. The right centre back was Tommy Redding.
Right.
And it looks for all the world like it's Tommy Redding's absolute fault, both goals. And it kind of is because they're 2 really bad defensive players. He gets burned twice, basically, right? But I think they both have the root cause in Aaron Herrera's positioning.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yeah, because on the first one, it's essentially Herrera pushes too far forward and then backs off a little bit.
He makes 2 decisions.
Yeah.
He's like a goalkeeper coming for a cross, then coming back.
Yeah, and I think neither one of them, if you had just made one, then it wouldn't have been necessarily wrong. But I think to do both, where you push way up the field, then you back off, so now you're way up the field and not really applying pressure, so that the player you're ostensibly marking can turn and play the ball forward, that's going to be a problem. And because you're pushed forward, you left space in behind, that then your center back friend has to come cover for you.
Because what? So it's number 7, Carosa is the guy that ends up running through. Tommy Redding is with him the whole way. But because Aaron Herrera backs off of whoever the left winger is, he gives that guy all the time in the world to pick out the perfect pass to lay into Carosa's path.
Yeah.
Okay, then we get to Tommy Redding.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll put highlights maybe in the show notes so you can go find this.
Sure.
He does not do a good job of trying to stop him.
No, he does not.
And it's not just that he's not as fast as him, right? There's definitely...
That certainly doesn't help. I think he is used to... If you were asking me for my gut read based on that game, I would say he is used to being fast. Or at least fast enough to keep up.
His pace can get him out of trouble.
Yeah, and I don't think he's necessarily notorious for being super fast, but it looks as though he thinks, because we've both had this before, where if you're defending, if you're kind of trying to stop a breakaway, you're neck and neck with the player, you can kind of get a read on, I can beat him, I can step in front and just poke that ball away.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Tommy Redding thinks he can do. But instead, as he goes to do that, his opponent shifts into 7th gear and really moves by him. And so now Redding is in behind, and in trying to make up for that, he falls over, which is never great.
And tries to get back up and
kind of falls again, right?
It's a double fall from Tommy Redding.
It's not great.
It won't make his highlight reel, put it that way.
No, it will not. I think it will also not make Jonathan Klinsmann's highlight reel, because then Jonathan Klinsmann tries to come out to kind of stop the breakaway. And I would say it may be commendable to try to handle a breakaway, but he didn't try to handle a breakaway. He tried to foot a breakaway in that he slid out feet first, and it would have been a penalty.
Definitely a penalty.
Could have been a sending off. My guess is it would have been a yellow card and a penalty.
Yep.
But he completely takes down the player, but then it spills to Lino, who finishes at home.
1-0 Ecuador early on.
Yes, yeah. And it's a good finish from Merlin Lino.
Don't worry, 2 minutes later, Ecuador score again.
And that's where I had seen this on Twitter, and I was like, I must have seen this wrong, because I had seen it as 2 goals in the first 6 minutes, which wasn't true. So at least there's that. It was the 7th minute the goal went in. And again, maybe it's Aaron Herrera stepping forward a little bit, and then just kind of not knowing what his role is. And I think it's Tommy Redding as well, not being entirely certain when to step and when to stay.
So Herrera comes out from right back into a weird, almost central defensive midfield position, and then leaves Tommy Redding trying to deal with something out on the wing. So then Tommy Redding is pulled over, and then Tommy Redding gets beat down the outside.
And I think it's Cabezas who actually makes the run across.
The Ecuadorian number 10,
And it seems as though Aaron Herrera just thinks Tommy Redding's going to get him. I'll step to the guy on the ball. And then Tommy Redding wasn't going to do that, but now he has to do that. And so then he's held back. Aaron Herrera pushes out wide, and now you've got space and plenty of gaps to exploit. And that's exactly what Ecuador do.
And not to be too, obviously we're US fans, we're focused on the US team, but this step over and acceleration and strike from Cabezas, pretty good, right? Because it's hard. The first time you see it, you don't quite see what he's done. But what Cabezas does is he does a step over, which is to fake to go one way. Then he realizes that Tommy Redding's a good defender, right? So he's read the step over. Then he thinks, okay, he's going the other way. So then Cabezas goes the way he was going to go anyway, right? He does like a double bluff. It's a double bluff to get around him, and then bangs it past Klinsmann.
Yeah, and I do have to say though that Tommy Redding, again, his defensive positioning isn't very great, and I think he tries to again go for the physical interception, and instead ends up almost. Does
he end up with his hands in the air?
Yeah, because he pulls back a little bit, and I think he realizes he easily could have conceded a penalty, and so he's pulling on Cabezas a little bit, and I think he lets go, and that's why you see the hands in the air. But again, it's not great positioning. He bites on the step over and really kind of doesn't do a good job of shepherding his opponent into the touchline.
I'm sorry, Orlando fans, if you're listening, because obviously I'm guessing if you're an Orlando fan, you're a big Tommy Redding fan, but that thing of grabbing him and then putting your hands up, you're better off just keep grabbing. At that point, rather than just let him go through on goal.
Yeah, and to me, all of this speaks to, again, the Marlon Fossey injury, but also the fact that Cameron Carter-Vickers, coming back from injury, hasn't played competitive soccer in, I think, 4 months or something like that.
He's not in there, right? But he probably will be.
But I'm going to say, I feel like maybe this was a game that he was 80% for. Or it just felt like maybe no one was entirely certain who was going to start in defense until last night.
So maybe Tommy Redding wasn't expecting 100% to start.
Yeah, or it was just sort of we're going to try a couple different combinations and see who does what in practice. So it just didn't seem like anybody kind of cohesively knew what was asked of them. And I think a player that definitely falls into that category as well is Gideon Zelalem.
Yes, okay, so if you haven't seen the lineup, this is a 4-3-3.
Yep.
With Gideon Zelalem at central defensive midfield.
Wearing a number 10, but playing number 6.
But playing as a deep line defensive midfielder, basically. Yep. And with all due respect to him, doing a terrible job of it. He does not offer any shield to his back four whatsoever. And here's the sort of bigger evidence for this. The US doesn't turn this game around until Zelalem is subbed out with an injury and replaced by Derek Jones, who is just a bigger physical presence. He wins headers all day in that position, and just sort of a stronger, more aggressive player, and just moves the ball a bit quicker.
That's the thing I'll say. And now I'll add that neither one of us has watched a lot of VVV highlights this season, so it could be that
if we had, we wouldn't have seen much of Zelalem.
There is that point. But it could be that they were playing him as a kind of defensive midfielder. But in this game, it felt much more like he was a guy who was used to being a number 8 maybe, or just kind of used to tracking his man. And so a lot of times you would see him drift wide with a midfielder and then kind of stay marking him and be like, I've got my guy, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But if you're the one who's shielding that back four, you're supposed to be doing...
Your job's bigger than that, right?
Yeah.
It's a more responsible thing where you have to shield the entire defence. And when you're one of the older guys on the roster who's already been through a World Cup tournament, I feel like then that more of the pressure falls on you because you're the experienced guy.
And so I think, and to that point as well, with what you were saying earlier, you also expect him to be the kind of calm presence. And you expect him to slow it down. And again, that goes to the Eredivisie, or what the Eerste Divisie, the second division, that you expect it to be still a little bit more technical, a little bit more emphasis on smart passing and smart moving.
You mean not just long balls that go nowhere?
We saw, 3 of those from him really early in the game that they didn't make a lot of sense.
He's trying to hit the $10 million ball.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
And really, that's not going to happen in this game. Whereas Derek Jones comes in and, the first thing we see from him is he wins a header. The next thing we see from him is he bodies somebody off and then turns in the same motion and plays a simple ball. He just does the simple things really well, and that's what you need to help provide stability, but also just kind of give you your rhythm and momentum back. And that's why I think you did see that change. Again, the defense never looked like, okay, we got it now. We are locked down solid. But there were still issues, but it looked much better once you had, it seems like, a dedicated defensive midfielder actually playing that spot.
He definitely helped, right? And just to underline this, the US scores 2 goals to equalise. Both goals start with either a Derek Jones tackle or Derek Jones receiving a loose ball, then playing a simple pass, then the US is off to the races.
And it's not just, when you say a simple pass, I know what you mean, but to clarify, it's not just gets the ball, plays it square, and then that's it.
No,
it's does that, receives the ball, turns and plays it forward. And it's even, and I know that sounds silly, but it's really important.
No, because the first one he holds someone off and then basically dribbles past someone before he plays the quote simple pass. Sorry, I didn't mean to underplay Derek Jones.
No, but it speaks to what I think was lacking, which is is at times if you are nervous, if you're suddenly 2-0 down, there's that inclination to just be like, all right, we're going to all do the safe thing. We're all going to do the simple thing. And that can be, I'm going to play it laterally. I'm going to drop it to the center back. I'm going to play it out wide. Mm-hmm. And when you have that midfielder who is capable and willing to turn and play that ball 10 yards forward, it transitions. It helps spark an attack. It helps move things forward. And I think that's something that that he did a really good job of, Derek Jones.
And we're missing the headline here.
Yep.
The headline is that Josh Sargent...
A guy who we didn't think was going to play that much, I have to say.
Josh Sargent scored 2 goals of the US's 3. If you haven't heard of Josh Sargent before, he is 17 years old. He's been playing for the US under-17s. He is not supposed to be in this U20 age group. He scored 2 goals.
He did, and he's scouted by Michael Hartman, who emailed in. Michael slept through the first 30-ish minutes of the USA's game against Ecuador.
Good choice, Jose.
Yeah, but did tune in time to see Sargent bang a brace for the U20s. Michael also did a good job of summing up the result of the game as that the US easily could have won, but also easily could have lost. And that is really accurate. But yeah, let's talk about those 2 goals from Josh Sargent, shall we?
Yeah, so the first one is, as we said, it's Derek Jones. Derek Jones receives the ball, rides a tackle, then he evades another guy, plays a simple ball to Luca De La Torre.
More on him later.
Luca De La Torre sort of drives at the Ecuador defence, pulls some guys towards him. Josh Sargent makes a very clever, bending run away, right? Just gets himself some space, receives the ball, horrible first touch.
Yep.
Gets lucky with his second touch, then beautiful finish.
Yeah.
That's my summary.
And that's an excellent summary. And I'll say the 2 components in there that I think should make you happy if you've bought Josh Sargent stock. Number one,
I have, by the way.
I know you have. I've written it on the board still. Is that it is a really good finish. He made it difficult for himself, but it's a nice on the half volley. Mm-hmm. It's well hit, and he is very pleased with it. But I think the key point that you mentioned is that little run that he makes, and it starts with the recognition of, oh, there is space here that Luca De La Torre is about to burst into. He doesn't need me standing here. So he recognizes that even
getting out of your teammate's way.
Even before De La Torre starts to make that run, Sargent has already checked away just a little bit and taken a defender with him. So now there's even more space. That is the type of veteran, intelligent run that I watched Jamie Vardy do last season and tried to emulate when I had to play striker and could not do because I am not a talented striker.
This is a guy playing 3 years up. Mm-hmm. 3 years up. And so actually, remember when I was saying he's the complete player in many ways when you watch him play for the U17s, because including that movement, that finishing, aerial threat. There was also, I thought for the U17s he did a really good job of being a strong target man, and he would hold the ball up and lay it off. In this game, the Ecuadorian centre-backs ate him alive every time he tried to do that. There's so many times he coughed up the ball, couldn't hold it because he wasn't as strong or wasn't used to facing guys with that much strength, right? So that had me worried. But when you see the intelligence to still be able to make space for yourself, it kind of makes me feel that's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Because he's 17. You know what happens when you're 17, right? You get bigger over the next 3-4 years.
This is true. Yep. And I think maybe he won't even need to get bigger to continue to be an aerial threat because that second goal, it comes... and this became a kind of consistent theme for the second half for the U.S. was get the ball to Brooks Lennon, let him play some balls into the box.
Okay, I'm going to use a phrase.
Yeah.
David Beckham-esque.
Yep.
That's what his crosses look like. They have that weird bend where they just hang a little bit and they turn in the air and it tempts defenders towards it, but then it goes away from them and then it lands on Josh Sargent's head. None of David Beckham's crosses did that.
Yeah, sadly.
But
it's low enough that it tempts the defender into doing that sort of I've got this, and they stop and then they square up to head it, and then there's that realization oh no, this is not going where I thought it would. But it's low enough and fast enough that it will keep the goalkeeper on the line.
Yep.
And so in this situation, that's exactly what it does. It is an inch-perfect cross onto the head of Josh Sargent,
yep.
who, that said, it is still a challenging header from, 8 yards or so out, and he buries it. So it's 2-2 at that point. It's a great header. It's a great ball.
And worth noting, just to put a bow on this, Derek Jones starts that move as well.
Yep.
Collects a loose ball, drives it forward. I think that's actually a really good pass into, I think it's to De La Torre, who then lays it out to Brooks Lennon. Mm-hmm. But again, it starts with good, strong, simple play from Derek Jones, defensive midfielder. If he doesn't start the next game, I'm going to be really angry with Tab Ramos.
Yeah, I think he probably
Surely he earned his spot, right?
Especially because one thing we didn't really mention, or maybe we did, but kind of skipped over, is that part of the reason why Derek Jones is in this game is because Gideon Zelalem went out with what they called a non-contact injury, but 5 minutes before he had been involved, I think he got his leg kicked and it was his plant foot.
He was blocking a shot, actually.
Is that what it was?
He was performing a defensive service.
He was then he got kicked. And so then he kind of came back on, still looked hesitant, and then stretched to play a ball and poke it away. And as he did, I think exacerbated an existing injury, and I'm going to guess it is not going to be a good result.
No, it was like the first one loosened the lid, and the second one was the lid popping off in a way that is not going to be. We may not see him for a bit.
No, the one that I always kind of go with in these situations, and it might definitely not be nearly this bad. But did you ever see Friday Night Lights, the movie?
No.
So it's basically a player tears his ACL and is told by the doctor, like, you can't play anymore. But football's his life. So then he comes back and is like, oh, no, I can run. Look, I can run back and forth. I'm fine. He goes in, tries to cut, and immediately goes down, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it felt a little bit like that. Not to that severity, but sort of like, okay, I can go back on. The pain's gone away a little bit. I'm sure it's just a quick little injury. It'll go away. I'll be fine. And then he stretched too far and maybe tore something completely as opposed to partially tearing it, or did enough damage that he felt that pain. Yeah. Because he went down and immediately was down and then brought off the field. So it seems like we probably won't see ZLM at least in the next game, and we'll see Derek Jones.
It feels bad to speak ill of the injured,
yeah.
But the US is much better off without him at defensive midfield.
Yes.
Right? ZLM should be playing instead of Adams or Williamson as one of those other two midfielders.
Yeah.
He should not be the deep laying guy. Maybe in a game when maybe he'd have been better off against Saudi Arabia, a game we expect to dominate more. Yeah. But against a tough opponent like Ecuador, this was not his day to play that role.
No, it was not. And then I think the other thing that happened in this one is I think certain players on the field recognize we need adversity to bring the best out of us. We can't just pull it back and then go up and win this game. We need something to chase. And so in comes Jonathan Klinsmann.
Oh, yeah. So Jim Broshar, who's scouting Jonathan Klinsmann, sent us a tweet this morning and said, I didn't watch the full game, but here's my scouting report. Spelled UGH.
Yes.
And just the gif of what Jonathan Klinsmann did for the third Ecuadorian goal.
And I feel really bad.
He definitely put his teammates out of their comfort zone, maybe as his dad instructed him to.
Yeah. And I feel really bad for Jim Broshar because he has been sending us updates here and there about what Klinsmann's been doing and about where he's been training, about what his expectations are. And so then it comes to this game, and it's not very good because he concedes what could have been a penalty. Mm-hmm. Maybe could have done better on the second goal. He gets beat at the near post. And then this goal. So it's a pass back that Kobe Jones, I think, really tries to give him some credit. Says he does phenomenally well with the first touch. It's like he just settles a pass with the first touch.
I think Kobe Jones is trying to make clear that it's the second touch where it all goes wrong.
Because he basically then tries to cut to beat a player, which you don't really want to do if you're the goalkeeper.
Yeah, kind of brother does.
And I think he's had similar issues because in this situation, when he goes to cut, he leaves the ball behind. It pops up in the air.
What he does, is when he cuts, he accidentally chips the ball up into his own knee. So instead of just taking the ball smoothly with him, the ball chips off the floor into his own knee, and then 2 Ecuadorians are on him, and then it's just a mad panic.
And then he's able to correct himself enough to poke the ball away, and then it's okay, it's clear. Oh no, it fell right to an Ecuadorian who finishes it first time, or maybe takes a touch and finishes. And so
it's all on him. There's no other reason.
It is, and I think for me, obviously that's a big mistake, but I think you had a really interesting point about that little semi-clearance there, and it feels like that is more representative of the game we saw from Jonathan Klinsmann.
Okay, yes. So to set the stage, there were a couple saves we saw from Jonathan Klinsmann where he would make the save, but do that sort of classic not great goalkeeper thing of then just directing the ball back into a danger area. Yep. It was almost just enough for him that he'd made the save, but he would bounce the ball back down into other Ecuadorian players, right?
Yeah.
All goalkeepers will tell you the thing is not just to make the save, but to make it so that you then put the ball out of danger. You tip it behind, you tip it wide, you punch it out for a throw-in, whatever. You get rid of it.
Yep.
And it seemed to me that, Klinsmann, obviously it's a moment of panic, right? You're just doing whatever you can do. But he seems to think it's enough to just poke the ball away from the 2 players that are right by him. Doesn't think that it's actually very dangerous if you poke it to an Ecuadorian attacker who's still only, 18 yards from goal when he receives the ball.
Yeah, or even there's a situation, I think definitely in the second half, when Ecuador played a long ball over the top. Klinsmann comes off his line to get to it, does beat the Ecuadorian attacker, but because he's under pressure, tries to kind of jump and pass the ball, and I think it's to Eric Palmer-Brown, and he gets it in the general direction of EPB, but it's still not right to his feet. It's about 5 yards away from him, and it feels again like he sort of is oh, okay, I've done my job, I got it clear.
I did the first bit.
Yeah, but that second bit could easily lead to an Ecuadorian player shooting from 30 yards out into an open net, and just a couple of those plays here and there from Klinsmann. He did have some saves, as you mentioned, but it felt like overall it was just a very reliant upon, I'm going to do the first thing and hopefully everybody covers up for me the rest of the way.
The one thing I'd be optimistic-ish about is that these are young goalkeeper errors, right? And you've got the athleticism to sort of get there in the first place. That may be a thing that like, makes you still capable of being professional. Didn't in one of Jim Scouting reports he said that Klinsmann's been training with Stuttgart and Everton, right? Which his dad has links there, so maybe some nepotism involved in that,
perhaps.
But these are things that can be cleared up, right? If someone can teach him to sort of get there, but also get there in a way that then makes sure, as opposed to presents you with more danger, then we could still have a good goalkeeper on our hands.
Yeah. So it's basically like what teams had to do, I think what the Falcons and the Redskins had to do with Michael Vick and RG3 respectively, which is sort of like, yes, you can run, but that's not always the best thing. Like,
of course,
stay in the pocket and throw the ball sometimes. Yeah. Stop running all the time. You're going to get killed. Yes. So it's 3-2 at this point. USA losing. We go into, the 94th minute? And then Luca De La Torre.
We go to the Brooks Lennon crossing zone.
Yeah. And then Luca De La Torre very calmly says, I got this.
So is it a Brooks Lennon cross that comes in? I'm pretty sure it is, right? Ecuador don't deal with it well. They sort of just nod it down back into US pressure. Luca De La Torre arrives and bangs it bottom corner, near post.
But outside of the foot. We got a report from Ben Henderson about this play, who mentions that LDLT, which is what we're going to nickname him from now on,
I love that.
Got the stoppage time equalizer for the Baby Yanks. He also had the assist, as we said, for the USA's
first goal.
First goal. He also mentions that Luca De La Torre's club team, Fulham, will still be in the championship next season, which means hopefully he gets some minutes. But in this game, I think it's worth noting that finish is excellent. And we had, I forget who it was, I apologize, tweet in or maybe email in to say that finish is way harder than it looks. Yeah. And I completely agree, because it is still from distance. It's a one-time hit with the outside of the foot into like a 1 yard gap, really?
Yeah, so there's traffic, right? There's a lot of Ecuadorian players blocking the way, but there is a tiny gap inside the near post, and De La Torre sort of bends it, he guides it through this tiny gap right into that little corner. Yeah,
and the most exceptional thing that I keep alluding to is his reaction, his celebration.
He doesn't even smile.
He doesn't smile. It's just very like, everybody calm down. We got this. Yeah. We got this. And it makes me wonder if that's like him just being cool, or if that's him trying to do the act like you've been here before sort of celebration. Like, we should be winning this game. We should be celebrating an equalizer. So let's all just calm it down. That said, he did sprint to the corner flag and make that kind of like, I don't even care face.
Yeah, I think maybe that's just his... Maybe that's what the kids do these days.
Yeah, it's
you celebrate like it's cool. Like, I mean, actually, someone accused me of doing that the other day at practice. I scored a goal that was better than the goals I usually score.
That's right.
And I did deliberately keep a straight face as if to imply, I do this anytime I feel like.
Yeah, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't at that point. Yeah, because if you over-celebrate that goal, then you're the jerk.
Yeah, then you make it look like it's like a once-in-a-lifetime thing as well.
Yeah. So, 3-3 draw in what I think is going to be the toughest game of this group stage.
I think so. I mean, people have said US and Ecuador are the two favourites. Yeah. I don't know how strong Senegal is. I believe Saudi Arabia's U20 team not that good. So, 3-3 draw against probably the other group favourite.
But we will find out how good Senegal are. Number one, I think they've played Saudi Arabia at this point. But
they won 2-0.
They're
top of the group.
But... 2 is that the USA play them at 7 a.m. We believe Thursday morning Eastern.
Yeah, it gets hard to calculate Korean time. But we're like 90% confident that it's 7 a.m. Thursday morning, Fox Sports 1. That one, I think we're still going to DVR just in case we oversleep.
Well, especially since I'm doing Goalmouth Wednesday night. It might be difficult. Okay. It might be difficult. We'll see.
But we'll have some sort of review of that game, right?
We will indeed.
Should be exciting. Final thing today, Taylor.
Yes, sir.
We have many TSS scouting reports.
That we
updates.
do.
We've got... So, before we get to the youth, can we just take a moment for the guys that retired this past weekend? Because I felt like there was a passing of the torch. There was a lot of guys sort of subbed out towards the end of games, and and everyone round of applause for Francesco Totti, for Philip Lahm, for Xabi Alonso, for John Terry, I believe, came out of the game for Chelsea. Yep. Probably many other people. Klaus-Jan Huntelaar, we saw play his last game for Schalke.
Yeah.
He may still continue. But we also saw some guys get their professional debuts, especially a couple of young Americans.
So do you want to start with those young Americans then?
Yeah, can we, since Nell talked it up?
Yeah. Sean Dickey emailed in scouting Weston McKennie, the 18-year-old American midfielder for Schalke. We don't have to add their U19s anymore because Weston was called up for Schalke's final game of the season and played the final 13 minutes of a 1-1 draw with FC Ingolstadt.
And we watched those 13 minutes.
We did. What do we make of those 13 minutes overall?
I think he looked perfectly at home, which was weird. He just looked like some 26-year-old guy who'd subbed into the game.
Yeah, and I think that's especially impressive since, as Sean notes, they were already a man down. They'd had a player sent off, had Schalke. So we think it was like a 4-4-1 with Weston McKennie playing in the middle.
With Leon Goretzka.
Yeah, and when you're trying to see out a 1-1 draw in a two-man midfield, you got to work hard. And he worked pretty hard. We saw him winning challenges. We saw him...
winning headers, a lot of headers.
Yeah. That's what I meant to say. Winning headers, doing well on the ball, had a couple mistakes, but overall I thought it was a pretty solid debut for a youngster.
There was one misplaced pass where he was just trying to play too quick, but that's still encouraging because it suggests he's trying to play quick. Right?
I think so. So congratulations to Weston McKennie.
And it may be that it was worth not going to the U20 World Cup to make your Schalke debut at the end of the season, because then when it comes to next season and they're thinking, shall we get Weston McKennie in the squad or not?
Yep.
If he's already played, he's already made his Bundesliga debut, that's off the check. That's a check mark next to that, already done. It sets him up well for next year.
Yeah, I think so. And sets him up to definitely be there in preseason, to have the time off that he needs to get ready for that.
Yeah. I'm
going to say 80% positive, 20% negative for the next one, coming from Michael Curry, scouting Haji Wright, 19-year-old American forward for Schalke. As Sean already emailed, Michael notes, Weston McKennie got onto the pitch for Schalke's first team this weekend, but Haji Wright did not. Haji was promoted to the first team, but Michael says it sounds like the coaching staff weren't as impressed with him during his January training stint with the first team. Luckily, he will have preseason to change their minds.
So was he on the bench for Schalke? I believe he was, right? But then didn't see the field.
Right.
But he's still closer than he's ever been.
Yeah.
So it's not bad.
I mean, and the other thing you could point out is that it was a relatively meaningless game because it's
relegated
1-1. Ingolstadt already relegated, Schalke already safe, but they're not, competing for any silverware or anything like that. So it might just be they were trying to see out a game. They didn't want to bring in a forward when you're already a man down. Could be that as well.
Fair enough. Oh, the next one's exciting.
All right, what you got?
James Jones scouting Andrew Carlton, 16-year-old American midfielder for Atlanta. So, James says, Andrew made his Atlanta United debut tonight. Right, this email was sent soon after, I believe.
You're throwing me with that pronunciation because one of the Ecuadorian players for the U20 team plays for Atalanta in Italy. So for a minute I was like, wait, what? Where did he go? Gotcha. Atlanta,
he subbed on for hat-trick hero Miguel Almiron. Fan consensus has it that the fifth loudest cheer of the night from sold-out Bobby Stadium was for Carlton coming on, which isn't bad for a 4-1 win. Carlton only subbed on with 5 minutes left in regulation, but he did manage to challenge DeMarcus Beasley within seconds of coming on. And when Beasley made his World Cup debut against Portugal in 2002, Andrew Carlton was still 17 days shy of his second birthday.
Not too shabby there.
Age gap.
We watched the highlights of this game and then all of the minutes, although the many, many minutes that Carlton was on the field. And again, similar to Weston McKennie, he did not look like a 16-year-old. He looked like a person who belonged on that team.
He did. What really got me was the chest pass.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
There was Atlanta were dominant in this game, right?
Wasn't that the first or second thing he did?
I think it was
pretty early on.
So the first thing he did was try and challenge DeMarcus Beasley down the corner.
Oh, right.
DeMarcus Beasley, he stopped
As the
Beasley.
just said.
Yeah. He stopped Beasley coming out from left back. It looked a perfectly fine, sensible thing because he played right wing. Perfectly good thing for a right winger to do. Stop the left back coming out, right?
Yep.
The former World Cup playing left back. The second thing was in a sort of pinball, ping it around Atlanta phase of play.
Yep.
Carlton just does that pectoral bang chest pass. I'm really impressed with that.
Yeah.
That takes some inventiveness, some confidence.
Yeah. And then there were the 4 minutes of injury time, I think 3.5 minutes gone. We were both like, oh, he's not going to get to touch the ball again.
This is after Cuba Torres scores that penalty kick.
Yeah.
Right?
And then off the corner, it spills to him. He collects it, turns, beats a player, dribbles all the way up the field, looks very smart on the ball. And then I would say does the veteran thing of drops it wide. Doesn't try to force anything because you don't want to risk a turnover, even though you're still 3 goals up.
Wouldn't it have been tempting for a 16-year-old on their debut?
Absolutely.
They're on a tear. It's the final few seconds. You're already 4-1 up. I think it was Beasley who was with him, actually. Yep. Wouldn't it be tempting to just accelerate away from him and try and get in on goal?
Yeah.
And instead,
That's why he's a professional and we are not.
Yeah. And we would have got overexcited, right?
Yep.
So well done to Andrew Carlton. Can also just praise Tata Martino, the decision to sub him off for Miguel Almiron, who scored that hat-trick, great hat-trick, by the way, means that the reason it's the fifth loudest cheer of the night is you get the double applause. You get one for Almiron's hat-trick, one for the debut of Carlton. That's a great moment to fill Carlton with pride and cheers.
There we go. And equal praise goes to, maybe not equal praise, but more praise goes to Josh Perez. Scouted by Andrew Baird. Josh Perez is a 19-year-old American forward for Fiorentina.
Another one who was not allowed to join up with the US under-20s. Right. This is more talent we're missing out on because he's back with Fiorentina.
But this is why. Fiorentina's Primavera side finished out the regular season with a 12-1 victory over Brescia last weekend. Yes, 12-1. Perez scored the 6th goal, and the win guaranteed his team, his Fiorentina side, a place in the final 8 of the Campionato Nazionale Primavera, which gets underway at the beginning of June.
So based on those words, I'm going to assume that means it's like the National Youth Team Championship.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I think that is maybe
I've
the
been watching
explanation.
the first 2 episodes of Master of None second season. So my Italian is...
You got your Italian?
Bella. Beautiful?
I'm not sure, but sure.
Okay.
Yes, but so I think that then explains why they didn't want to let him go.
Yep.
They want to see what their Primavera team can do. You want a player who's been scoring goals for that Primavera team to be included on that roster.
Yeah, all right. Josh Perez, worth remembering.
Yep.
More scouting reports, Taylor. What else we got?
Well, we've got more Americans.
Okay.
We've got Danielle Gaither scouting DeSavio Payne, the 21-year-old American defender, formerly of Groningen. Daniel says, according to various reports, Payne has signed a 2-year contract with an option for a third with Dutch side Excelsior. Meaning he will be staying in the Eredivisie next season. I believe they finished 12th.
So, yeah, we were worried that Groningen decided not to pick up his contract meant that something had gone terribly wrong with DeSavio Payne, and we may see him start tumbling down the ladder and maybe playing in the Belgian 5th Division in a couple of years. But no, he's back, staying in the Eredivisie with Excelsior, my new favourite team next season.
Yes, so thank you to Danielle for keeping track of that.
Yes.
Keeping us all calm. So those were the US-centric reports, but we've got a couple other ones to go, Daryl Grove.
Yeah, we do. Should we start in the U20 World Cup?
Sure.
Todd Ito is scouting Takafesa Kubo. I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly. Can I try again? Takefusa Kubo.
Yep. Takefusa Kubo.
That's nice. The 16-year-old Japanese attacking midfielder for FC Tokyo. Kubo came on in the 59th minute of Japan's game against South Africa in the first match of the U20 World Cup. Japan won 2-1, and Kubo provided the assist for the winner. It was a nice 1-2 combination with Ritsu Doan, and Todd says that Takafusa is definitely not just a mixtape legend. He looks like the real deal.
And it was a really nice series of combination passes. We both watched this highlight. Yes, it's shocking to believe that this kid is 16 years old.
So this is a Josh Sargent
calm on the ball.
It's a Josh Sargent type situation, right? Where he's
let's
playing
not go that
several. He's even younger. He's doing better than Josh Sargent.
Yeah, I know, but you've already said big things about Josh Sargent. I don't think you want to double down on Takafusa. You may well. Who knows?
Really nice cutback and assist though. So
there we go.
Good work.
Jeff Parks emails in scouting Ben Chilwell, the 20-year-old, English left back for Leicester. Chilwell scored his first Premier League goal for Leicester City on Thursday, thereby providing the only bright spot for the Foxes in a 6-1 defeat. He also contributed to Leicester's equaliser against Bournemouth, providing the cross that eventually led to a Jamie Vardy goal. All
right, more English left-backs. Keep them coming. Let's go over to Chelsea. Michael Fisk is scouting Andreas Christensen, 21-year-old Danish centre-back for Borussia Mönchengladbach, on loan from Chelsea. Michael says, prior to their 2-2 draw with Darmstadt this weekend, Gladbach said Auf Wiedersehen to both Andreas Christensen and Mahmoud Dahoud. They both got flowers, nice, and framed collections of photos of them playing for Die Fohlen. So it looks like Andreas will be heading back to Chelsea and will compete with Kurt Zouma and possibly Virgil van Dijk, what they may be signing him, to be Chelsea's 3rd or 4th choice centre-back.
Probably 4th.
Gladbach are still interested in making his loan move permanent, even though Michael reports that both goals were sort of Christensen's fault this weekend.
Yeah. So I guess good news for Christensen in the sense that it seems like Chelsea are not willing to let him go. They do want to see what he can do in the preseason. That means in our
plans, right?
Yeah, and Gladbach, I think, made a statement like, if preseason doesn't go well, we'll be here.
Yeah.
Unless you want to, I think they really said, like, unless you want to sell him for $25 million, in which case someone else will be there. But you know who is probably not pleased about this news?
Matthew Miazga?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that puts him, and then you had Nathan Ake.
Yep.
That makes Miazga, the 8th choice centre back right now?
Let's do this. John Terry is leaving.
Yep.
Okay, so he's out. But then starting guys this year, Cahill, Luiz, Aspilicueta, Dave. Then you got Kurt Zouma in the mix. Andreas Christensen coming back. Who else did you just mention? Maybe Virgil van Dijk. That's 6. So that would put Matt Miazga at 7.
No.
Nathan Ake?
Nathan Ake, yeah. 7. So it's 7 or 8 is what we're going to say.
Yeah. And that's in a back 3, so he's still like 2 entire teams away.
So good luck on your loan move next year, Matt Miazga.
Yeah, let's hope he goes somewhere interesting.
Yes.
By which I mean not the Eredivisie and not playing all the time. You know what I mean?
Like
a
another
championship team where he played regularly would be more interesting to me.
I'd be okay with that. Even a Premier League team where he was like the first choice off the bench centre back, I wouldn't even mind that one so much.
Yeah, that would be better than 7th or 8th.
Indeed.
Right? Yeah. Or honestly, Vitesse Arnhem and you're guaranteed to start every game.
Yeah.
That's more interesting because we get to have a good look at him then.
All right, so then so I like that you've gone from definitely not the Eredivisie to maybe the Eredivisie.
Well, I meant just more not like basically I've been disappointed this year with Miazga being at Vitesse and not starting is frustrating, and Gideon Zalem being at VVV and barely playing is super depressing.
Yep.
So I'm just kind of down on the Dutch league as a place to go go, especially if you're not going to play.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
It might be there's too much youth talent.
Maybe he can go to South Africa, which is where our final report comes from. John Crispin scouting Phakamani Malambi, the 19-year-old South African forward for Bidvest Wits. So, off note from here, I have to say, I do love Pac-Man only because he reminds me of a wonderful 2-second scene in a recent movie that just came out, and I'm going to leave it at that, but it made me very, very happy.
Exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
Malambi has withdrawn from South Africa's U20 World Cup team due to a hamstring injury he sustained in training. It sounds like he might need surgery, but there haven't been any more details at time of reading this on the show.
He's going to take his brother's hamstring?
He might. It's going to take his brother's legs, yes. That's how it's going to work.
Slowly, right? Piece by piece. That's what's going to happen.
Yes. Oh, Pac-Man. Such a good scene. Such a good scene.
All right, thank you to everybody who sent in scouting reports. We really, really appreciate it. If you would like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, the link will be in the show notes. You go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. We especially want to say, if somebody catches your eye at the U20 World Cup, there's a good chance they're not being scouted because this is like a whole fresh generation of young players we'll be seeing for the first time. Maybe some of the England players that beat Argentina. Mm-hmm. Those are up for grabs. Except for Dom Solanke, he's already taken.
Except for a couple of them, actually. But
Is that right? Okay. But if a player catches your eye and you just want to support the show, totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. You'll help us keep making the Total Soccer Show.
That you will. Daryl Grove, before we go, I have one trivia question for you.
Uh-oh.
I have the U.S. Soccer match report from their game against Ecuador in front of me.
Yeah.
According to the official press release, what was the attendance at that game?
According to the official press release?
Yes.
All right, so I saw it and there weren't many.
What was your guess of bet if I just said what was the attendance?
My guess would have been 800.
Yeah, okay. 3,886.
Nope. There wasn't.
There were not.
There's no way.
There were not 3,000 people there.
There may have been that many tickets given away.
That is a distinct possibility.
Okay.
All right.
But we love the U20 World Cup.
We do.
We are going to keep an eye on the US team.
I'm glad that little addendum from me made sure to keep us over an hour on this episode.
Good job, buddy.
My pleasure, bud.
All right, Taylor, thank you for taking the time to overtalk to me today.
That's what I do. Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with some US Open Cup upset talk. I'm not going to spoil that one for you to see what that is. And a preview of Ajax versus Manchester United in the Europa League final. Until then, it is goodbye from us.